In the future 3, Africans will have a podcast that exposes all my efforts to convince the blacks that black capitalism will help them.
I said these politicians clowns, so let me reiterate it. Just being libs when never liberated.
Has been given a lot of attention and a lot of resources where we've literally turned some reactionaries into celebrities and given them hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to go around the world to oppose our effeminization.
The stats show we only care about our figures.
$1 trillion of critical minerals in Ukraine. They could be the richest country in all of Europe. I don't want to give that money. And those assets to Putin to share with China. If we help Ukraine now,
they milking our chocolate, we think we rich. They give us some chips so we can brag. Ay, why they own the potatoes and keep the bag? Now you stacking your Pringles and I ain't mad. Ay, gotta sell that black soul for whitey's cachet.
We're not a racist organization because we understand that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything will be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people. And we're going to have to put it back in the hands.
My paper chasing past to have me feeling like a hypocrite. The dollars can't compromise the change I'm trying to implement. I use the mic to keep the Decepticons at bay with the same qualms as Noam Chomsky and Kwame Ture, hood socialists with a new era beret. It's like they neuralize you. We just redo errors. It's crazy. They got new Elijahs Xing out black messiahs today, trying to neutralize us. Just COINTELPRO away. Hey, loyalty, it's rarely immune to pay. These coons come buffoon for the Klansmen that they obey. They discard us, disregard us, we take them back anyway. We easy prey, it's evident by the precedents that we lay. Well adjusted to injustice, our people in disarray. Feel the terror from mega ever scared to go disobey. We recite the words, they fearing the play. They Othello, the
millionaires are paupers.
To get their way.
Right. Worldwide net private wealth stood at $450 trillion in 2022. That I just, and to Diallo's point, remember what this number means. This is money. This is wealth produced for private ownership by all of us, extracted from all of us, in all that we do in the economy.
If they're not educated, they want more, and before you know it, they'll be capitalists, and before you know it, we have Negro imperialism.
Yo, what's up, world? Welcome to Earn Your Liberation, episode 82. Diallo Kenyatta, Geechee, y'all, Jared Ball. What's up, fellas?
Cool, man. How y'all feeling?
The temperature done dropped on me, man. I woke up this morning and it was like freezing in here. I had to run downstairs and get a sweater.
In Chicago?
Yep.
Well, at least y'all don't have no storms and no tornadoes and stuff. Did any of that come up?
No. We don't worship false idols. So,
well, apparently we do here in Maryland because it's still going a little bit.
And they say Haiti had an earthquake because they made a deal with the devil to get out of slavery.
Yeah. I told people Maryland worships the crab. And the verse, I think it's right after the verse in the Bible that condemns homosexuality, condemns shellfish.
Yeah.
So I feel like we've been tempting fate in this state for a long time. So, and clearly the Bible is 100% correct. So
exactly. So
I don't know about 100%. The Bible is 50% right, and then ClaudAnderson is the other 50%.
No, we're not going.
I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry.
We're not gonna be dissing the elders.
We gonna get to that later.
No, we're not. No, we're not.
I'm just saying we just gonna read the brother. That's it.
Hey, big shout out to the remixers and those who are joining us live and those who will see this later. Big shout out to you. Please do continue to subscribe and support our Patreon. We do have some news, just and some updates coming regarding the platform. There's some hurdles. A new hurdle has been put before us. And so we're going to have to work around it. There will be some changes coming to how we address things. But the short of it is, and I know more details and statements are coming, but the platform has been permanently demonetized. So that 90-day trial period became permanent, according to the Google overlord. So when ignobality, if that's even a word, when ignobality meets the state, you get demonetized. So in some ways, as some have said, we could predict this, but in others, we just need to find new ways around that. So Patreon, you can continue to support us materially that way, and Cash App. Just stay tuned, and we appreciate you all sticking with us. But yeah, stay tuned. Things, I know
the way I was whack, but you can't get a nigga back like that.
Yeah, when David Silberg, when ignobality meets the state, you know what I'm saying? Ignobality, I want that to be a word. The ignoble behavior, So, but it's all good. What's the best way to approach this with my let's see. I dipped into my medicine bag last night, and it's funny that Diallo started with Sweater, because as I'm watching in the early hours of the morning old episodes of 30 Rock, which in general I like, because as I've said, they approach race in the way that makes me more comfortable in commercial media. Tracy Jordan, or Tracy Morgan Jordan on the show, notwithstanding. But he says this line years ago. He says this line where he thinks he's been put on a phone call with Bill Cosby. And Tracy Jordan's character says to the person who he thinks put him on the call, "Why would you put me on a call with this man? I remember what you did to my aunt back in 1971. I didn't catch it at the time, I said, "Wow, yeah." So,
yeah,
I don't know where that was a non sequitur, really. Yeah. So yeah, please continue to show your support and stick around and stay tuned. And I know we got our guests here already. We got a big show. The work continues, and so I'll turn it over to my good comrades here.
Yeah, so we know that I've been in Cuba for a couple weeks, and this morning we want to kind of do part one of a report back, talking with one of my brothers that I met on the trip, who happened to be my roommate on the brigade, and then maybe in the future, the leaders from the organization that was hosting the brigade will come say back, and we'll bring a few people back. But I want to bring. What you say?
Are we gonna finally get to those ominous threats?
Well, no. But the leaders, the leaders of the brigade.
No suffices. Oprah, when I say the leaders, no is a complete sentence.
When I say leaders, I meant the people.
I'm sorry.
I meant the people from actual Cuba who actually was helping us navigate the country and giving us information about different things. I know myself in particular was asking them all type of questions that I wanted to know, and I know my brother was doing the same thing. But let's bring my brother Mikael.
My bad.
Mikael, you can introduce yourself to the people, then we can kind of get started in the dialogue. We only have an hour with my brother, but maybe we might need to transition to another topic.
Appreciate y'all for having me. Big admirer of what y'all are doing here. So yeah, thank you for the space. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So
man,
I want to jump in here real quick. I got to hijack something real quick because now that you introduced, so we do need to hear more full intro from you, brother, if you don't mind. But on the way to doing that, I would appreciate it if you would include in your bio description what was it like to be a roommate with Geechee, the passport bro overseas.
Stop doing that, bro.
Let's get to that. All this Cuba and socialism and communism, all this revolution. Nobody want to hear about all that. Let's hear about that.
No, I don't know how detailed we want to get. I don't know how detailed we want to get. Nah, it was a pleasure getting to meet my brother Geechee on the trip. And just I think for 2 weeks we were just, sitting in the bus, going from venue to venue, city to city, just kind of talking about what we were reading, what we were experiencing, what we were seeing, and thinking in response to, I don't want to speak for you, Geechee, but that definitely had a big impact on me. But by way of introduction, my name is Mikhail. I'm based in occupied Lenape land, which is eastern Pennsylvania. Really from the New York City area. I'm a writer, I'm a professor, and Ethiopian descent, beneficiary of that Black liberation struggle that opened up immigration in the late 60s and early 70s to non-European migration. So I guess that's a little bit about me. I grew up in the South, grew up outside of Atlanta. As far as my research and what I'm focused on now is just, I'm working on a book about a narrative history of Rucker Park in Harlem, which I've been working on for a while now. Kind of grew out of my first project, which was also a kind of history of Harlem woven into the life story of fashion designer Dapper Dan. And so I think that
wait. So that work is already done?
Yeah, that work is out there. That work is out there. I was kind of like the co-author of that. And
we got to get to that. We got to get to all of that. You have to come back for the Rucker Park too. That sounds
Park is overrated. What about Ebbets Field in Brooklyn? How come Ebbets Field don't get no love? I'm sick of this.
Ebbets Field, I think Ebbets Field no longer stands. I think that's part of it.
Exactly. They had to tear it down. That's how it flies.
Fat Joe didn't come through there and make it hot. Like he did
at all. We
was really balling in Evansville. Wasn't no showboat.
You wasn't balling in Evansville.
Wasn't no showboating. Wasn't no celebrities. It was just true street ball in Evansville.
Stop it.
Yeah.
And I'm sick of Evansville getting overlooked in street ball history, and Rutgers Park just taking all the glory.
I know. Rutgers kind of like the elder of the street ball courts. It's not necessarily as hot as it used to be. Now that goes to Dykeman. You got other places like Gersh in Brooklyn, but Rutgers is kind of like the, I think about it as the museum piece, the Mecca, the holy site. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me. And I organize with the Multinational Communist Party, which has a couple chapters in the around the country, and organized with the chapter that's based in the New York City area. I mean, and that was kind of how. Sorry to interrupt, but that was kind of how I got connected with the Vencer Ramos brigade. Yeah.
Well, as we get started, speaking of street ball, do know I was up in them streets and I was beating these children in soccer. Yeah, I was.
This is the footage he tries to bring back in the claim.
All I know is they try to call me out, and I went out there and handled my business. That's all I remember.
I don't see. All I saw is one still photo. I hope you don't claim that as evidence.
It don't matter. We got the videos later on.
That's not what I heard.
You said soccer and
that's not what I heard. I didn't hear you.
You fronting because you said soccer and not.
Well, I'm calling it soccer because I'm American.
We already know. I stopped listening after soccer.
Oh, boy.
You ain't you're not a real one.
So we had 2 weeks in Cuba, and I guess I want to start off, Mikhail, with maybe some reflections, takeaways, there's obviously like a precedence to learn about the struggle and learn about how the blockade and embargoes and all those travel bans are impacting them. But I guess we could start with some of your initial takeaways of being in Cuba, being in that situation, connecting with people, whether it's the local people or even in people on the brigade, just kind of overall take backs or feelings about it.
Yeah. Obviously since we got back from the 2 weeks in Cuba, I've been thinking a lot about just the differences in the history in particular and the government. Obviously they have a socialist government, very strong communist party that works alongside the government, which is definitely for the people and of the people. And it's not I didn't know what I expected. I think you hear a lot of propaganda. I was just thinking about before I went to Cuba, we hear so much. I don't know, for some reason it was always about the food. It was always like, there's a lot of pork and you're not going to be able to eat meat because maybe at the time I was more on a vegetarian or vegan diet. So I think there was just this sense that the blockade was affecting the country, affecting the people in a severe way. But when I got there, it was just this sense of it's definitely an island. It definitely has limited amounts of what it can do in terms of production and development and what resources that they can kind of export. And I think we were talking a lot with our tour guide, who I think you're hoping to get on the show, about just the limitations of production that Cuba has in terms of being able to feed its own people and not having maybe the full range of agricultural capabilities of other countries and needing to exchange. So that was all very interesting to me because it put another layer onto that propaganda of like food in particular. And at the same time, it's a fully functioning, very hospitable, very warm society. And one little detail that has been sticking with me is a lot of the people on this brigade, they come from left spaces. You have Pan-Africanists, you have Marxist-Leninists, you have some liberals and progressives and things like that. But a lot of the people on the bus, most of us are kind of maybe more accustomed to the police kind of, kettling us and, coming after us, antagonizing us, which actually happened upon our return to Miami. But in Cuba, the whole time we were there on our, delegation, the police were escorting us through traffic. The police, one in the front and one in the back, they were just, treating us in a different kind of way. And I think it spoke volumes for a lot of us. I could hear people talking about, the effect that was having just kind of mentally on what it does to make you feel kind of like you're among the people. So yeah, I would say, there's a lot to it, but that's kind of my first attempt at, reporting back about my initial feelings.
Yeah. So a couple things we're going to, when we get into the topic of Claude Anderson later, he made some statements about socialism in Cuba. And then ironically, one of his really good friends was a Cuban who moved to Miami, who was anti-Castro. And then he started like meeting with Castro and he started flipping. And then I don't know what happened with him and Claude Anderson. And then I also want to get into even that feel of being in this brigade with a whole bunch of different people, which almost felt like a quick mass org, right? Because as you said, it's like a catch of people on the left. And then I want to chime in with my brothers about just our experience with mass orgs. Even with this platform, at one point we had all different type of people on the left, and sometimes those can be ideological issues. But as you said, there were so when I remember us being at the one of the hospitals, and we met with the doctors. One of the hospitals was named after Augustino Neto, who's a Angolan fighter for independence. They named the hospital after him, and then in the hospital they had like, you know, Samora Machel and a bunch of African leaders there on the walls. And I remember talking to them about, like, you know, one of the first questions that I had was like, literally, how do they handle like mental health in this space? Like, you know, I remember, or I know, like in the US, a lot of people who get called for, police get called for mental health cases and people end up killed, including my a brother of mine that I grew up with here in Atlanta, Anthony Hill. He was also one of the people who was a ex-military person who was murdered. But what I also saw was, even when we weren't being escorted, like how police was interacting with just average citizens. And I mean, I thought it was like, I mean, they giving each other daps and talking, and any of the like conflict. I think there was one time when somebody was asking for money and just kind of like talking, and I think he was trying to shoot a shot at one of the ladies on the brigade, and it wasn't like aggressive. They just kind of like talked to him, and you know, he kept going or whatever. So I wonder in terms of like the hospital, like there's a picture. I was looking for the picture, I couldn't find it, but we was like doing productive work, and we was cutting grass with the machetes, and there's a picture of me and Mikael with the machetes, but I couldn't find the picture. I don't know if you sent it to me or who sent it to me, but I would love to hear your thoughts.
You found that still photo you claim is evidence that you beat people in some game.
I mean, I got the video, bro. We got the video. We'll show you the video. I don't want to brag on beating kids in Cuba. That's not the first thing.
When it comes to the work, there's no evidence. You can't find the photo all of a sudden.
No, but I wonder how you feel about some of the productive work. I myself would have liked to spend more time with local people and kind of talk and dialogue and go through day to day. I do appreciate some going to different spots in the productive work, but I wonder how you felt about like some of the productive work and our chances of being able to connect with some of the leaders.
Yeah, first of all, I do have that photo, so that one I'm gonna agree with you that you were putting in work with the machetes. So,
thank you so much.
But yeah, it was fun. It's funny. I was thinking about this the other night, just you know, knowing that this organization kind of has made its legacy over, you know, half a century based on productive work. Like that was the original, you know, cutting sugar cane with the Cuban people and the Cuban workers. So I respect that, but I do think, you know, maybe the size of the group, the different capabilities that people have, you know, when you have, you know, people who are differently abled and not able to participate in the same way, or elder, or for whatever reason it may be. So I think that the productive work has definitely become more symbolic. A lot of the work that we did was kind of, you know, low stakes and just not you could ramp it up and really put in work and really work up, feel like after a couple hours like you did something. But I think for the most part, I agree with you. You know, the moments where we were able to really connect in an unmediated way with the Cuban people, it was mostly like the town square. We would just pull up to the town square and they would have you know, a band playing, and they would have some market set up because they knew we were coming, and our hosts and the organization had set up like just you know, to spend some time in the town square. And I remember we did this, and I met and had a conversation in you know, my broken Spanish. I know your Spanish is very good, Geechee. At least, you know, to communicate on a certain level. So we were, trying he was very much coaching me. And I learned through talking to him about his experiences fighting in Angola. As an 18-year-old, I learned about his experience kind of coming back and becoming an engineer, showing me pictures of his children, and who recently had a birthday. And so we're still in communication. I know you had similar experiences, but it seemed like most of the opportunities we had to connect with the Cuban people, besides the officials who would speak to us, the panelists, the invited speakers, the experts in certain medical fields, environmental fields, cultural fields, was through these, I don't know, town square pull-ups, you might call them. And I appreciated that, but it definitely wasn't necessarily in the context of working alongside and when we were doing the work, we weren't necessarily interacting with the workers. But I don't know how you felt about the productive work and what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, so I think Josh asked, what is the productive work? So throughout the trip, there were times where we obviously was taking aid to the people in need. We were meeting with officials, meeting with different organizations, but then each day, I think, not each day, but most of the time on the trip, we will help these organizations engage in whatever productive work. Actually, one of the nostalgic times where, because, I don't know people's understanding of Gullah history and rice, but I actually was at a rice farm helping dry rice, like gather up rice and dry it on the streets, right? And then like scoop it back up, put it in bags and prepare it to kind of be distributed. And then obviously I was also cutting coconut and stuff like that. But the productive work was us just engaging with their day-to-day work and helping them with that. But yeah, I mean, I do think that was time for us to connect. Some of our free time, like I feel like the way in which we engage with some of the members, like I've met several people that, as I think I told all of y'all, like I plan on probably going back during my birthday in October and have like a different experience, because each time we went to these sessions, we were able to talk with people. So sometimes on our free time, we would, go out and kick it with some of them. So I think that was more of a better time to have like real conversation. In those conversations, I got to, chop it up with people on the street, chop it up people that at bars or whatever, and ask them about like the day-to-day and like things like the gangs. Like, for instance, I didn't know, one of the sisters told me it was like 13 different gangs in the Guantanamo city area. And so just learning about how people engage and navigate around that. And before I let Diallo or Jared ask a question, I want to just kind of state, so what our goals was obviously to learn more about the blockade, how travel bans and these things impact Cuba, so that we can come back in some type of organized fashion to help educate people in the U.S. about the impacts and hopefully struggle to get it in. Also, like the U.S. U.S. military occupation of Guantanamo Bay, we got to kind of scope out and see what those dynamics was there from a distance. And then also, obviously, just to strengthen our connections with people in Cuba and create more cross collaborations. But Diallo or Jared, go ahead and ask some questions.
Can I start? Well, I appreciate you letting me ask questions, Geechee. So apparently,
I'm sorry.
You learned, bro. I guess U.S. propaganda is somewhat right about the Cuban dictatorship. Did they teach you dictatorship when you were down there for 2 weeks?
Pretty much.
Anyway, so thank you, Comrade Grande, for your permission, letting me ask a question. Okay. Glad you got back here. I'm glad you're back here. So, anyway, I'm glad you touched on the embargo. Maybe if you guys could speak on the state of the illegal embargo and even for the immense amount of economic repression, economic warfare and subversion against Cuba by the U.S. juggernaut, economic and military juggernaut. And as there been any type of progress on the embargo. And I also want to speak to Cuba's role in world revolution. We even know about Che Guevara's ominous assertion that we needed several Cubas all over the world. We needed ongoing guerrilla uprising, or else Cuba could become an isolated bastion surrounded by hostile forces, as opposed to a beacon for revolution, guerrilla uprising, and warfare. So has Cuba's role and status, because, you know, the left holds Cuba in high regard. But as we look at the history from them arming, training, and providing material support to anti-imperialist, anti-colonial uprisings, to being just a moral and a symbol to where they stand now, especially with modern resistance and modern uprising and the fight against neo-colonialism. And finally, the relationship between communist Russia and Cuba. And then we look at the fall of the Cuban, of the Soviet Union in the early 90s, and the reassertion of the Russian Federation. And we have a lot of anti-neo-colonial movements, the Sahel in particular, that align with the Russian Federation. And is being aligned with the Russian Federation the same as being aligned with the former Soviet Union in terms of fight against Western capitalism and Western hegemony? Those are my three.
You got all that? You got all that?
And nigga did a monologue just now, but so
I just had to. I just got permission to ask questions, and
I didn't say ask 17.
Go ahead. I didn't know.
I'm gonna ask every question I've ever had.
I had to ask every freaking question because I didn't know if it would be revoked, if my permission would.
we gonna answer what we can answer, and then on the second part, when
listen, first the embargo,
come back. Yeah.
Second, Cuba's status and in world revolution, and its status as both a symbol and a practical ally in world revolution. And third, are we confused about, is there a lot of confusion in the left about the Soviet Union and the current Russian Federation? That's it.
You want to start, Mikael?
Sure, I can start.
You got to give him permission to start too. Wow,
bro! If you either I'm gonna be a dictator, you gonna let me dictate. You can't be no dictate advisor.
How they lied about Cuba being a dictatorship.
Listen, bro, we don't need no dictator.
After 2 weeks, you're not repping Cuba very well. But I guess go ahead, hurry up, Mikael. He gave you.
I know I don't got much time. I gotta slip in 3 things like you did.
Yeah.
No, I guess. You know, I could talk about the second part, which is Cuba and its role in internationalist struggle, which I think was one of the things that was the most kind of inspiring, or I would say just it's a real history of internationalist struggle that I only kind of knew the surface of, and I think, like a lot of us, if you don't actually go and talk to the people who've been in Angola, who've been in the Congo alongside Che, and some of these brothers are still here, and they still have stories, and they still have much to teach us about what it means to be in solidarity, and not abstract solidarity, but material solidarity. And so I think that was a big I think a lot of people on the trip felt the power of that, Cuba's role in, I mean, even my kind of ancestral homeland of Ethiopia, there's a relationship in that medical facility that Geechee mentioned earlier, where we were surrounded by the portraits of Samora Machel, Thomas Sankara, Nelson Mandela. There was also a portrait of Mengistu Haile Mariam, which was probably the first time I've ever seen a portrait of Mengistu Haile Mariam, anywhere, including in Ethiopia. So that was interesting, because I think that there's, and maybe this has a connection, Diallo, to your to the question about Russia, which is to say, that old relationship between the Soviet bloc and Ethiopia under Haile Mariam. It kind of, there is a complicated but historic relationship between Cuba and all of the societies that were aligned with socialism, were aligned with the dictatorship of the proletariat. So yeah, I guess that's kind of 2 and a little bit of 3, but I'll pass it back to Comandante Geechee.
No, so I think in terms of the embargo, like, again, one of the things that we're gonna kind of get to with Claude Anderson's comments, the embargo has been long standing, and the objective of the embargo is to destabilize the Cuban revolution, the government, create dissension, and allow them to overthrow the leadership. And so obviously haven't worked, and we would say still not working, but it also is making progress really hard. So for instance, in terms of having resources, and even as I'm learning, even though Diallo will hate this title, learning in Fidel and religion, how the government is able to prioritize things that the people need most and or benefit from, or that can produce resources so that they can distribute those resources, is making that harder. So for instance, when I remember we was riding at one point and I saw these newly developed houses, and the leader was telling us that, oh, those are houses for people who need houses. And it's almost like how we do land trusts, but it goes into ownership of the people. So the military, doctors, and different people who need housing, they build those houses, but they start running out of money to build those houses. And so things like them not having the capacity to get things like Tylenol and insulin and all these other things because of the embargo is still standing. It just hasn't working, and it hasn't worked. And from my experience with, again, talking to local people, I do believe, and this is my small, experience, that a large majority of the people understand how this embargo is impacting them, as opposed to what the U.S. wanted, to blame the government. That doesn't mean people don't think that the government is doing a particular thing, but I feel like the political education and the clarity is pretty good. Like, and it's very similar to how it was in when I was in Nicaragua. Like, the majority of the people, they just understand what the fuck is going on. And so in terms of the embargo, yeah, it makes it harder for people to get basic things. And then so also one thing, I don't know if this is, I guess, connected to the embargo and making people focus on one thing. There seems to be a lot of foods that maybe me and Diallo and Jared know about, all of us are plant-based, like breadfruit, banana blossom, that as a country they don't even like use. And I mean, there might be a lot of other fruits that they don't use much of it. And I think the leader was telling me that it's either lack of knowledge, one, or very, very, very rare. Sometimes people just don't like a particular thing. And so I don't know. I think in terms of like the embargo part, like, and the illegal sanctions and all these other things, I feel like that's, again, the consequences of being a particular type of country. And one more thing that I learned about the investment that comes in, they will share some of the profits, but they will never share ownership. So any of the hotels and stuff that we've been in, they're government owned, and then they might show people other countries who invest in them, but they have a particular way in which they allow you to invest in whatever industry that they're in. And then, as Mikhail says, when we are in the hospitals and when we are different parts of the country, we are seeing the way Cuba has aided and been in solidarity with other groups fighting off imperialism. And I mean, yeah, I do think it's a large testament to what revolution will look like, but also how they have been impacted in a global fight against U.S. imperialism and others in imperialism.
Yeah, and I just add on the just to build on what Geechee mentioned is I think the relationship with Russia still is being maintained, and there was so much going on while we were on the brigade. We got news of Biden dropping out of the election. We got news of what's currently transpiring in Venezuela. A few days later, and so it was like we're seeing that there is a vulnerability to protecting the revolution. There is a vulnerability to this is not a guarantee that it can. And I think the Soviet Union and the collapse of that federation is also kind of proof to that. But I mean, just realistically speaking, the number one industry in Cuba, according to our host, is tourism. And so at the current moment, I think we learned that there was a lot of Russian tourism that is that seems to be kind of the number one. I haven't done my due diligence and really checked that out, but it seems from the conversations that we had that there's still that kind of there's an economic relationship to Russia through tourism. So that was all I wanted to kind of attach to that. But yeah,
Jared, you may ask questions now.
No, I appreciate just being allowed to participate in any way. I actually wasn't sure we got through all of Diallo's questions, which were largely where mine were centered around anyway. And I honestly don't remember the all 3 points, but did we get to all of yours, Diallo? Because it was something.
I think they touched on some of them. I think they let the Russian Federation kind of off the hook, but I think that Russia is riding off of a lot of USSR goodwill that it doesn't deserve, but that's probably, I don't want to kind of hijack the discussion, but in terms of the embargo, but I think that we need to hit harder that an embargo is an act of war.
Yeah.
An embargo isn't an economic decision. It's not an economic policy. And when people talk about the embargo against Cuba, they often talk about it in terms of the economics of Cuba and the economic impacts of Cuba. But an embargo is an act of warfare between one state to the next. If any nation attempted to blockade U.S. shores or ports and not allow resources to come in or out, the United States would mobilize the military. It wouldn't send diplomats. It wouldn't send economists. It wouldn't begin to internally adjust its trade policies in order to circumvent. The United States would mobilize the full force of its nuclear and military arsenal against any nation that attempted to blockade. So the United States has been in perpetual warfare with Cuba, undeclared illegal international. Every U.S. president since D. Eisenhower qualifies as an international war criminal by their own laws, not by the laws they wrote and imposed on the world, not by anything. So I think we, just from my point of view, need to deal with the embargo from not just an economic impact and an economic tactic or strategy, but it is an illegal international act of war. And the United States is deploying this warfare for means of not just to communicate to Cuba, but they do that to communicate to the rest of the world that if you are going to go off of the model, the economic model, if you do not, so the whole world is under siege or under direct threat, where Cuba is being made an example of. So I think the embargo goes so much further, and I don't think we really discuss it enough in its proper context.
Now listen.
That was bars.
So I know we got
too. And I think in Musa, I saw Musa in the chat making this point too. I mean, it is genocide. That's and I just happened to be reviewing that Ward Churchill's discussion of the UN resolution after the Second World War, and all the various forms that genocide can take, legally speaking, and denial of access to food, medicine, and resources is absolutely on the list. So,
yeah, and that's for remember when the embargo against Saddam Hussein and the Ba'athist Party, there was an embargo there, and it lasted almost 20 years, and people talked about the impact. Whereas the Cuban embargo, which is more comprehensive than the one against Saddam and Iraq, has been going on 3 times longer.
Yeah, but even Madeleine Albright said of the one in Iraq, I don't care. 500,000 kids died from them saying. She was like, I don't care.
She said it was worth it. She said the goals and objectives of the U.S. State Department. She said they said there how many over 2 million children had died as a result of.
Well, at the time it was 500,000. They said children had died. That was the time of the news at the time. And then
quick,
a million and a half.
I don't want to return too bad, but I want to, because I knew this was going to come up, and I just kind of like wanted to
just interrupted both of us. I
did. Boom. Gavel. But I knew this was coming up, right? So Mr. Anderson says, did y'all experience or see any racial caste issues of the Afro-Cubans in society, and how this isolation or embargo may or has been affecting specifically the Afro-Cubans? So there were times where this question kept coming up, or there was like racism, and I do think they specifically addressed it almost in each area. But Mikael, was there any thoughts or response to this question in your experience on how they kind of dealt with the constant questions about racism, and caste?
Yeah, I really appreciate this question, Kadir Anderson. And I think, because of the way that we were being introduced by the host to the social issues in the country, I think what we kept hearing was, this is different than the United States. Our history is different than the United States. We, had our independence fight after the abolition of slavery, which, is kind of the reverse of what happened in the United States, where so-called independence was able to somehow coexist with enslavement, as it still does in terms of the prison system. And so I think, they were kind of saying we have a different history, we have a different relationship to racial caste and racism. And so that was kind of how we were introduced. And in truth, like at every event, it was very much foregrounded, almost every event, whether it was an ecological event talking about, rising sea levels in the Caribbean and increasingly damaging storms. There was conversation about how that would, what were the effects in terms of what regions and who, what the demographics of that region were. When it came to LGBTQ plus issues and women's rights, it was also foregrounded in terms of race and anti-Blackness. But I think there was this sense, and Geechee, you can maybe confirm this, that like there is a Cuban identity. And I think for me, coming as an African from the United States, I was kind of like, that sounds a little bit like we're all Americans. That sounds a little bit like, we don't see race. Like, I don't care if when people are like black, blue, purple, and it's like, who's, are we talking about Barney? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I think there was this sense of like, we're all Cuban. And I think as kind of a guest in the country, you kind of had to, I felt, compelled to be like, all right, I'll hear you out because it is a different history. But I think mostly in terms of what I saw with my eyes, it was still like an imperfect society as it came to racial case. You saw colorism in terms of who was in certain positions. It wasn't always across the board this way, but I think, in terms of what seemed to be like maybe lack or poverty, like it was rare to see lighter skinned Cuban people in those kinds of situations. But again, like that was kind of my take on it, that there was a Cuban identity that was distinct from what maybe we think of as like a national identity, and that was like a hard earned sense of nationhood, that I don't know, Geechee, if you think that might be something to aspire to or something to like question and interrogate more, but that was kind of my take on it. I appreciate that question.
And Geechee, before you answer, to what extent, because my thing is, albeit it's been 20 plus years since I was there and it was only brief couple weeks, but we were told explicitly, we were in spaces that were clearly Afro-Cuban. We were told explicitly from the people there that these issues still are prevalent and real. But at the same time, they were proud of the revolution, proud of the revolution's connection to the African diaspora. They were not, the argument was not to say that the existing racism in Cuba should be used as an excuse to fight the revolution. They were saying, they were just very clear that things had to be worked out. And Geechee, to my question for you is, to what extent I agreed with, and still do, those there and here who would argue that one of the best ways to mitigate against what will obviously still be a white supremacist worldview for many is socialism. In other words, if you can, to a certain extent, guarantee a proper distribution of all the goods, services, and wealth that society produces, the particular attitudes and perspectives of those who would, self-claim to be white or whatever, could be reduced or mitigated to some extent. But what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think as my brother was pointing out, I do remember also, so one, being curated in a way where we specifically going to work with and talk to Afro-Cubans, maybe in leadership roles. We talked to an artist who we went to talk to an artist who I think it was Langston Hughes bus. I think so. It was kind of some fun. Like he made a Langston Hughes bus, and yeah, I don't know. Like it was different. I don't know if he hit it on the head, but so we got to see a lot of that. And then I guess the contradiction, as Mikael pointed out, like when we in different cities, like the people who were street vendors or living in not so favorable conditions, I don't really remember seeing lighter skinned Cubans. And then I think even so, one, with the group being, there's a lot of white people in the group, and there's a lot of shit that's going on within the group. So we, our senses are heightened on how we having this experience. And there were one particular struggle that I feel like escalated when some translation got mistranslated. And so one of the African sisters was talking about what was happening to the African people and talking about the Afro-Cuban history. And she explicitly used the word genocide, and the translator just left that out. And somebody in the back said, no, like she said also genocide. And then she even came to a couple of people and was like, yo, I appreciate you doing that, because I explicitly said that. So I do think there has been, I guess, a idea or a mark to reach towards. And yes, I think that part still has to be worked out. But I wonder how to have the conversation and not have it kind of like broad stroke, like a ClaudAnderson would do, like because racism is still there, so that means socialism is not. I don't know what Diallo chicken said. Socialism is not a viable option because racism is there too. I just think there should be a, I don't know, I guess a separating of the conversations of it. But go ahead, Diallo. You were shaking your head.
Oh, go ahead.
Listen, I mean, I know y'all have a lot of affection for these people y'all call brown, but I've been telling y'all about these goddamn conquistadors.
Oh.
And y'all, listen, it's everywhere. First of all, white aggression, white racial aggression, white phenotypical hostility. They don't engage in that behavior because we're black. They do it because they're white. So I've been in vegan spaces, socialist spaces, progressive, leftist spaces. Racism inundates everything that white people are going to be a part of. So our job should never be to cure white people of racism, but to destroy our or dismantle or put in fixes for our vulnerability. We should only focus on our vulnerability to racism and racist, never racist attitudes and behaviors, and unless it's to inform how us to diminish or destroy our vulnerability. Because you're going to get that shit everywhere. But as Jared said, that does not delegitimize communism, socialism. And like I said, you go to the ecology and environmental movement. It's racist. Racism inundates that. But that does not invalidate. We still got to fucking stop ocean acidification and the melting of the ice caps. So racism is omnipresent, and race first ideology and race first resistance should also be omnipresent. So it should also be that any non-white, non-black, non-African person moving in any spaces, saying everywhere you go, you see black people conscious, deliberately, directly, and consistently engaged in anti-racist coordination and action, should be embedded and a partner to anything else you're doing. I mean, the feminist movement, there's no movement. So anywhere you have people, white folks or non-African folks, you're going to have racial hostility and racist aggression. So I don't think that Cuba's exempt from that. I don't think that the people who believe that racism somehow invalidates communism, invalidates socialism, invalidates revolution, guerrilla warfare, guerrilla tactics. Anyone that makes that excuse is pretty much being intellectually dishonest about that, because nothing would be valid in existence if that fallacious assertion was true. But all that to say is it's everywhere all the time. It's the fucking given. And we should act accordingly as African people, no matter what ideological or what geographical spaces we're moving or navigating. That should be fixed. And that's why race first should be the cornerstone. And after race first comes ideology, comes class, comes tactics, strategy, and everything else.
So
I don't know how many more times we got to go through this. We got race first, literally a century ago. The race first ideology was given to the African world, and we still, playing like we don't know what time it is.
So before Mikal goes, I want you to respond to everything you just heard, and then Musa's statement: racism in Cuba is horizontal, mainly cultural, and not vertical.
Now wait, put that back. Wait.
Now we got horizontal. Okay, whatever.
I wonder, I guess.
I think I get it. I think I get it. It took me a second, but I think I get it.
Nah.
No?
But go ahead, Mikal, because we got time. We're running out of time. Real quick. Let Mikal respond because we're running out of time. We run out of time.
To the extent that hierarchies exist, the conquistadors are here and the Africans are here. To the extent that they exist. So even if the hierarchies only have this much distance, unlike in the US where it's like this, whenever there's hierarchies, we on the bottom. So,
right, but didn't Musa say largely, wasn't there a qualifier in there? And the point being, because as I'm interpreting the point, that's what I'm trying to say, that it's not that there isn't hierarchy or whiteness, et cetera, and so forth, and all that you said. It's that if you enact socialism heading towards communism, it does flatten it out. The hostility. But my point is, but from my point is, the way I simplified in my own mind is, I don't care if my neighbors don't like me, as long as that dislike cannot materialize. That's my point. Or if it's less likely to materialize. That's all I'm saying. I'm not interested because I agree with you, Diallo. I don't want it to be my mission to make them like me and understand my humanity. I'd rather address that differently. But if they're just over there hating me, but the resources our society is redistributed and my health care and all that is taken care of, I'm good with that, because I don't need to interact. That's how I understand it. But go ahead.
Go ahead, Mika, respond though.
There's a lot to say, but I think I'm thinking about this book, Red Africa, that I read, and kind of to respond to what Diallo said about race first. And I think, the conversation, at least in certain circles around Afro-pessimism, as a kind of anti-communist, anti-socialist kind of worldview. I think that book, which is the subtitle is Unpacking Revolution or Reclaiming Revolutionary Black Politics. I think there's something to Elon. And so I was thinking about that, how, I think one of the big things that was in small conversations that we were having was about this idea of, how do you square the circle in terms of race and class? How do you kind of make, how do you make that, whether it's that appeal rhetorically when you're speaking with people, or how do you kind of just conceptually think about that? And so I think, to your point, it's not necessarily a utopian. I think people get it confused about socialism as this utopian destination, as opposed to like an ongoing process. And I don't necessarily think, Diallo, you were negating that, but I think we're in a sense, it was seeing in Cuba people continuing to struggle through failing at certain points, learning how to materially address the phenotypical, the 500-year historical or even longer challenge of fighting anti-Blackness, existing in an anti-Black world. So I think the last quote that kind of I wanted to kind of leave with was from a book that, Geechee, you were reading for a couple weeks on the brigade, the collected works of the Black Liberation Army, which I was inspired to pick up after our conversations. And I forget the chapter, but it was this idea, and I'm gonna bungle the quote a little bit, but that the attention should be placed on positively affecting Black consciousness, Black liberation consciousness, as opposed to trying to deal with white racism. That like the energy be placed on doing that amongst ourselves, because, to Diallo's point, the futility of trying to address white racism. And I think on that note, I'm going to say this platform, Earn Your Liberation, what you're doing here, is in that tradition, and I was very honored to be a part of it this morning, and I appreciate you, Geechee, and appreciate you, Diallo and Jared, for having me. So yeah.
Anytime, and definitely I gotta get your earlier work, and then on no, the earlier work was on now I just went blank. Tell me the
on Rucker?
No, Rutgers. I thought the newer work that's forthcoming. You said that there was something that I just went blank. There was something that was already out that I was interested in.
Yeah,
interested in. What was it though? Now I just went blank. Help me out.
You could check me out at my website is first name, my last name is Awake, AWAKE .com, first name, last name.com. Check out the platform for MCP as well. You can Google that, and that's and there's more to come in terms of work that'll address some of the issues that we're discussing this morning and beyond. So, and
Geechee, can you put that in the link in the description, or give me the link and I'll put it in the show description, and we'll just make it all there, and we'll continue this another time.
Yeah, we'll definitely. Yeah, so appreciate you, brother.
Peace. Take good care.
Peace.
All right.
Peace. Oh, my mic was. I had to mute my mic.
So
hey,
go ahead.
Well, because I just feel like we about to go to another segment.
Yeah, we are. We about to take to Diallo's
clip.
We about to go to Diallo's.
Sounds so beautiful.
That sounds like Chrisette Michelle, yo.
I think you were asking him about his work with Dapper Dan.
That's it. I just totally blanked out. But yeah, thank you. That was what
you want an excuse to break out your puffy bootleg Louis
Vuitton.
Oh
man, you don't know. You don't know.
Word on the street when we get to Jackson, Mississippi, he got an outfit for us. I think he said he's coming out fresh. So street.
And as Diallo has in the name tag, we will be in Jackson, Mississippi to support Skip Coon's album release for the incredible album August. And Diallo, you were right. I got to hear it. It's a classic. I think it's.
Still got another week to put it on the streets to bootleg to get our money off top.
Really,
y'all want to come?
Really,
Diallo is a grifter.
We could be selling off the trunk.
You a grifter?
Really?
That's your own man. You grifting your own mans, yo. That's your own mans. You did the same thing to.
This is money. It ain't what they say. Get out your feelings. What?
That's why you was hanging with them cats up there with Shayun. See.
Nirvana, the album is banana. I mean, he really is, and I really do like the pairing with Mr. Nick as a on the production. I just loved how the sound, the vibe, the energy. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So we'll be there August 17th, Jackson, Mississippi at Urban Foxes. So come on through.
Maybe we can.
Is there a bar there?
What do you mean? Is there a bar there in Jackson?
In Urban Foxes is what I mean.
I was about to say, what the hell? Yeah, there's a few bars around that corner. There's a Whole Foods up there too for you. For you and Diallo.
Right.
Bouginess. We can get some coffee from Whole Foods. No, so listen, man. Let's start it off this way. Can you please tell me, off of love, your days following or listening to Brother Claude Anderson, or at least start with what he got right at some point before we get into examining him.
I'm gonna just do some constructive reading. I'm just gonna sit here and read.
Y'all we getting in there too.
Y'all head down this path, and there's no coming back.
What do you mean? We just really examining what he said
about respecting your elders, so thine days may be long and prosperous.
All right, let's do it a different way. Jared, could you start with the clip first? Maybe let's start with the clip first of his latest clip. Now, the clip comes from almost 2 or 3 years ago when he was on Charlamagne's little show. Let me stop saying that. Charlamagne's show. When Chico Bean was interviewing.
Man.
I mean, but you even talked. You said it. You said wax.
Wait, which clip? Oh, because you didn't put it in the run sheet, though, did you?
No, you put it in the run sheet.
I put it in the run sheet?
Yes.
I sure did.
You sure did. Don't worry about it, man. I know y'all.
I sure did.
He got tagged on Twitter. Somebody tagged all 3 of us.
Yeah.
I didn't
on
watch
this.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, this was it. Yeah.
But again, it's almost 3 years old, so it's not like something new. And we actually covered this a while back.
3 years old is not new.
Well, I'm just saying
it's not brand new.
It just didn't happen. We did
talk a little bit about it before.
Yeah, the God's honest truth. It was in 2021 when Chico Bean was interviewing Claude, and we got actually, but anyway, play that clip and then let's get into not the elder slander, but the examination of this elder.
Came out of black people. It's a little concerning to me when I hear a lot of professors, particularly on college campuses, talking about anti-capitalism. Capitalism is the best thing we got going. The opposite of that would be socialism. Capitalism means private sector owning and controlling resources and being able to make profit. People say, well, Dr. Anderson, let's go for socialism and just push socialism where the government owns everything and they control everything and with restraints and all the profits go straight to government. Cuba, very few people own anything. Same cars have been there since 1950 are still running. Just repair the same old cars. And the few businesses that exist, you got to be close to a prince or a god to get a business in Cuba.
Wow.
And that's why most of those Cubans that came into Miami, they flew out of there right quick because they wanted to practice capitalism.
Let me tell y'all something. Dick Gregory said, there's clones among us. They snatching some of our people off the streets and putting out clones. And if you look, most of the clones have some indentation on the side of their forehead.
My gosh, this guy.
So
that's not really Claude.
It could. I don't know. Have you investigated?
I mean, I met him a couple times. I met him a couple times.
That ain't the Claude I was raised on.
I met him a couple. All right, well, tell us about the Claude you was raised on before we get into this.
The Claude
that same Claude was also on the Rock Newman show and other spaces. He's been, that version has been around a lot lately.
Oh, don't worry, we're gonna get into his whole.
Because that's your fault, though.
No,
he said way back in like 97, 98, we had 5 to 10 years
in the 70s
to implement his program to sell that goddamn fish and leather hats, and if we didn't, we would be part of a permanent underclass.
Well, we're going to get to the fish business and his wife giving him a loan. We're going to get to all that. We're going to get to all that.
But I know taught group economics, and he literally said the only time the federal government, he was pro-government intervention, pro-government using government policies and government ownership and pro-immigration. He said one of the most greatest harms that the United States government committed against the African population, against black folks, was preventing the migration of African people from the continent and from the Caribbean. So ADOS Anderson, anti-socialist Anderson, I don't know where y'all got that dude from.
So look, Claude was talking about Cuba a little bit, and this is Claude's really close friend when Claude was in Florida and he was doing his thing under one of the governors there. And he mentioned this guy as one of his good friends from Cuba, who was a Cuban who was moving to Miami. He was a part of anti-Castro brigades and all type of shit. He even went to the Bay of Pigs to try to destabilize the country. But when he got back to Miami, he said, well, maybe we should stop killing other Cubans. Cuba should start killing Cubans. Maybe we should be in conversation with Fidel. The minute he becomes in conversation with Fidel, he gets fired from his little organization, and he actually begins to flip his politics and his view of Cuba, the revolution, and them being the government they have. So even Claude's friend wouldn't give that whack ass analysis that he just tried to give about Cuba on that thing. But again, as I look through with Claude's own words, and I put that in the show notes, not in the show notes, but in the run sheet. There's an interview of Claude when he just got hired as a governor assistant in Florida, because as he's always bragging or people brag that he was a part of the Carter administration. The reason why he got there is because Ruben Askew, who was the governor in Florida, is the one who hired him because he was trying to hire a bunch of black heads in different departments. Specifically, Claude's job was to tell him what to say to black people so that he can get black people's buy-in. But when Ruben got pulled up by Jimmy Carter, Claude came up with him. But during this interview, he talks about his appointing, him being tasked with working with the blacks, as he always call us, and pretty much advocating for the blacks in some type of fashion. And also in this is a letter to Obama that kind of, again, lay out Claude's politics. And I don't think it actually changed from what I read in Black Labor, White Wealth. And as we can kind of see with Powernomics, like, I think he's always been on that toting the line where he is explicitly the voice for the blacks. And I do say this, when he said he was even in office, he said none of the other blacks in office would mess with him. And then also none of the blacks in the streets and the communities would mess with him. He even called Yeshitela, well, he didn't call him out, but he said, like, you know, they sometimes do good work, or they sometimes do political work, but most of the Florida blacks are backwards. So he's always had this weird ass interaction with how he addressed black folks and how he has an answer for black folks, and we should just listen to him. But again,
and we didn't.
I think he got a lot of listening done to him. I think people platform him pretty well.
Didn't buy enough fish and leather hats.
The fish junk failed though. Like and his
I didn't buy the fish.
No, well, because there's no business solution to this. So that's what I initially appreciated. What I thought years and years ago when I first picked up Anderson's work was that I thought he was giving an honest assessment of the nightmares of this economic system and why black people were permanently going to be barred from it. But increasingly, as I paid more attention, and he to my mind took on a renewed popularity, the focus was almost exclusively on, as we just saw in that clip, the viability of business and capital, and a lot of emphasis on the shortcomings of black people's culture and choices and behavior as the problem, as opposed to anything else. So I just want to emphasize very quickly that what he said there about Cuba, and I know, Geechee, you said, but I just want to reemphasize that the reason they're remaking old cars is because they are isolated and blocked off from the global economy.
Socialism.
And they're also pointing to something that's probably a better model, that we don't need all this planned obsolescence and the replacement and evolution and new productivity in a new car every year. What we need is sustainable modes of transportation that don't destroy the planet and that help people get, where we need to get and all that. So, yeah. But in addition to other things,
So real quick, Diallo. So with the fish industry, as you said that we should pay attention to. So he's had since before the business.
Pay attention to the fish industry.
You said buy fish. We should buy the fish. I'm sorry.
Buy Claude's fish.
The tilapia. We should buy the tilapia that he grew in his backyard. My bad. So he had some run-ins even before it was falling, and when he took the loan out with the bank, but there actually was a point where his wife actually loaned him some money, and I don't know, they did some weird stuff. Joan Anderson loaned him $510,000, and there was some type of, she was trying to, so the bank had they leveraged his business and the land and the property by giving him the loan. And so they had a lien on it. So she tried to give him another $500,000 so she can get the lien. And so they actually tried to swindle the land from the bank. But that didn't end well. So
business too much.
Aren't we supposed to be looking into? I mean, we need to learn how to recreate the shit, right? So if Dr. May will give you a $5,000 loan to lean against the other bank, I mean, that's how we gonna win, right?
Your dictatorial skills are already fading. No, the people don't need to know nothing. They need to be told.
But for me, the issue is, again, I have the petty side and the interest in the personal and sometimes and all that, but ultimately, really, I'm more interested in the arguments and how they and really the context that would have produced them. And yes, and thankfully, there's been an extension on this book chapter to the end of September. But as I'm looking at this, trying to look at this specifically the history of the narrative around Black capitalism, I just noticed this, I know we kind of tracked. I just want to share this real quick. I'm just as a wild oversimplification at the forthcoming InvestFest lineup. One of the reasons why I think people like Anderson and others have had a sort of resurgence, have had their arguments maybe adjusted and maybe re-emphasized or whatever, is because of this broader context and media environment that's been promoting Black capitalism as a white supremacist capitalist guise just of self-defense, self-protection, I guess. And so I'm just looking at the lineup for this year's InvestFest, and I'll admit that if it weren't for the active work we three and others are engaged in, I could see this as being demoralizing. I mean, the amount of people, the celebrity, the popularity, the breadth of Black voices that are being co-opted and invited or just welcomed into these spaces.
Was going to do that.
I mean, this whole lane, this whole line right here. So and my point ultimately is that the work that we're all involved in, Billy Carson, the work we're all involved in is really going to require more collectivity, more organization, because we are, again, and even more specifically, I'm thinking of my students who are about to come into my classroom again this fall. All of them in one way or another are engaged with all of these people. Yeah, and they're all touting a Black capitalist ethic as a solution, as the solution. And then, even got Bernice King, not that should be seen as a major surprise, but the fact that the celebrity association, DeMaurice Smith, people may remember him as the former NFLPA rep. I'm not so familiar with.
He's a Christian rap. He's the Christian rapper who was beefing with all the other rappers, and he's actually in Atlanta. I saw him the other day.
We know about brother Ross Mack. So I mean, so my point in all that is just to say that this is the world. Now, behind all of this is the algorithm, the advertising, the venture capital, the corporate, the broader capitalist white supremacist ethic that is supporting, promoting, propping, inviting all of this, but it's being prepared and delivered upon us through all of these beautiful and talented, well, mostly Black people, and then these younger generations are able to tap back into a certain group of elders that they can promote without having really engaged their work or whatever. And those elders are at times willing to accept those invitations and will happily adjust their arguments for the levels of popularity and access to the community that they are granted through this. I mean, and this just keeps going. I mean, they just have, so I was just looking at this, like they have really, we've been sort of tracking and somewhat, criticizing and joking this group a little bit, but look at, I mean, they have really expanded, and are making our collective work. So I'll just say that while I'm saying that, I'll just say as another reminder that as our platform has, in fact, and we can come back to, has been permanently demonetized, I would encourage those who are in attendance here to continue to like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon so that we can try to sort of mitigate the world against which we stand as an organized or attempted organized effort in response. So let's
pause there because we got to get back to a particular person that's going to be on that lineup. But before we get there, I want to play this little clip that I sent and then kind of finish up with Claude Anderson, because there's a point in his interview that I want y'all to read, and where he looks like he is saying that like the Black people can't speak for themselves and we got to go give them the narrative before the radicals get to them. But we'll get to that in a second, but let's play this clip.
How do we catch up as Black folk?
How you catch up? This is a national plan for Black folk. It says a national plan to empower Black Americans, period. And what you first thing you got to do, to make it long story short, you got to have what you never had in this country. That's a group self-interest. You've been inculcated and coordinated and brainwashed and believing that you got some obligation and responsibility to save the world. You got to save everybody first before you save yourself. Now, I'm a pilot. I don't fly anymore. I'm too old to be flying. One of the first things I would tell people on my plane as passengers, the first thing you do, if we lose cabin pressure at 30,000 feet, we don't have any cabin pressure at night over 10,000 feet. If you lose cabin pressure, a panel over your head will fall down.
Right.
When that mask falls down, the first thing you all should be doing is putting the mask on yourself. Quit trying to save everybody. Why does always got black folk marching, trying to save it? We're marching for gays. We're marching for women. We're marching for poor people. We're marching for the handicapped. And yet you only control 1/2 of 1% of wealth. You haven't got a snowball's chance. And then the end of slavery, as I said, you had 1/2 of 1%. Guess what? The average white person at that point in time had 3,500 times more wealth than the average black. That means that 99% of everything in this country was in the white society, and it's still in the white society. I don't care from Vermont all the way to California, San Diego. 98% of everything of value is locked in the white society. 87% of it's frozen, locked into white society. You can't get it out. So all you got to compete for is about 13% is up for grabs. And if black folk don't learn how to compete for that 13%, you are through. And right now,
for that 13%.
It's happening around the world. You see all these, we're going to implode in this country. Same thing happening in Germany.
So in terms of competing for that 13,
that's not in his fucking book. I read this book.
Well, let's see what's in his book.
It's not in the fucking book.
Well, he was in the book.
Well, hold on.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I mean, because in the book, he actually starts with the maldistribution of wealth and resources as the number one reason why we're not competitive. But then he go into inappropriate behavior and some other shit that just doesn't make any sense. But even when he talked about the maldistribution of wealth, he peddles and dribble. He don't really deal with it. But again, the book to me is, honestly, I told Jared earlier, like, I was reading Blueprint for Black Power more than I was reading this. I think I probably like looked at it and then Black Labor, White Wealth, maybe so, but go ahead.
That's why you broke. Well, the bottom line is Claude Anderson is an integrationist and a liberal. And if you look at his evolution, because he's been around for decades, he's one of the prominent black people that has been around for quite some time. And because of his liberal integrationism, he's always tried to ride the line between the black left, black liberationists, and black status quo and black integrationists. And he was involved in the fallacy that black people can employ or engage the unjust system. We could extract justice from injustice if we just played the game. So you'll look with these liberals and these integrationists, they always tend to trend or fall towards the right when they're confronted with the overwhelming contradictions of their position. And so that's the problem. We see a lot of liberals. If the liberals and the integrationists, even of the purest heart, when they start to get confronted with the contradictions, more often than going to the left and understanding this isn't far enough, this is inadequate, they tend to go towards the right and develop more right-wing and more reactionary points of views and call for more reactionary and right-wing tactics, strategies, and outcomes. So that's the problem with Claude Anderson, all jokes aside. His group economics is literally him trying to say, let's collectively do capitalism.
Right.
And at the same time, at the core of capitalism, free enterprise and competition. Let's cooperate to compete. So we'll be internally we'll work together and pull our resources to the point where Claude Anderson said, don't open a business. He said, if you're black, don't open business. He would go all over the country. I got all my Claude Anderson shit. And this VHS tape he was selling across the country. He did it at a mega church like 30 years ago. And he said, don't open a business. He said, if you open a business, it's going to go broke. He said, we all have to pool our money together and have a common pot and commonality. And at the same time, he's out here. And now the pro-business Black entrepreneurial community is looking at the very man who said decades ago, don't open a business because businesses are not going to help you. And if you open a business, it's going to drain your opportunities and resources. Right. His position was government intervention and public policy is the only thing that has ever saved us in the past and will ever save us going forward. Right. And now he's saying the government, we don't want the government owning anything. And now he's a neoliberal capitalist, not just a capitalist, but a neoliberal, deregulatory, no government intervention capitalist. So
can I just add quickly that he said that we're out here busy marching for the women and the gays and the disabled. I just want to point out that in the Black community, there are women, all of them, gays, and disabled. And I would dare to say there's even a disabled gay women. There's even disabled gay women in the Black community. So
but we're going to get to them after the revolution. Remember, we're going to put their mask on after we secure liberation and freedom. Then we're going to put their mask on.
So look.
Hey, sisters, once all of cisgendered, heterosexual Black men, once we get everything coming to us, we will trickle down. We will trickle down resources and trickle down rights to you. That's how it works, right?
So in this, so Claude has a whole letter to Barack Obama, and he talks about, we need to strengthen this nation. And if you ever read it, you should. I mean, we can pull it up, but if you ever read it, it's very comical. His foreign policy is shit. It's foreign from reality. He also, in this interview, which I want to read this part and then have y'all respond. But he talked about like the glory days of Black colleges, and we need to get back to what they was established to do. And again, like the lack of Black people's wealth is the primary problem in his analysis. The primary problem is we just need to get more wealth to participate in capitalism, as Diallo say. And that makes Floyd, I'm sorry, I'm about to call him Floyd McKissick, but that makes Claude Anderson no different than Floyd McKissick, any other Black capitalist person who was pulled in by one of those administrations to be the model for the rest of the Black folks. But again, Claude's idea of creating an alternative economy in the Black community, and he says, to credit to Jared's buying power, wherever the Black people spend the money is the industry we need to create our business in. We need to get those Black dollars and then obviously be able to participate in capitalism. And he knows so much to do, but again, he was appointed by Reuben Askew, who was a governor who only did the racial busing shit because that's what people want. He even said, Reuben says, I don't agree with it, nobody agree with this, but we have to do it because he wanted to win. So he put those Black people in place because he wanted to win, and he, as Claude said, give them free range, but really he wasn't making no decisions about money. All his job was to tell Reuben what to say to Black people, so Black people buy in. Okay. And again, in the same interview, Claude would even say, Black people won't come talk to me. I got all the information in the world. They won't talk to me. Black people in office won't talk to me. Black people organizing won't talk to me. But also, and then one more thing before we get into this little clip. I mean, it's interview. He talks about how the reason why he's so important of a voice because he's mixed biracial. He has a white father and he has a Black mother, and he understands both sides, so he could talk to both people. And that's why
Claude.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Listen, man. That's why he knows so much.
My man. I take everything back. He's all screwed with me now.
He that guy.
We all good now.
But so tell me what this.
God. But wait. Seriously, his argument. You're saying he argued at one point that being mixed helped him to better understand
both sides of the argument, and this is why he's so effective. But so one of Claude is an intellectual giant.
I wouldn't say that's entirely not. I wouldn't say there's no value to that argument. I wouldn't say there's no value to it. I wouldn't. Well, real quick, I don't agree with that. I think
real quick. Listen to this right quick. So one of Claude's job was to anytime there was an issue. What happened?
I'm telling you, like, look, Josephus is right. Being mixed is a superpower. I'm trying to tell you. I'm trying to tell you.
I'm talking about gives you insight into to the black and white world. That's some bullshit.
So I have to say I don't agree, because for a long time, again, sort of as an oversimplified joke, I have said that nobody understands white people in this world better than Black Americans, and within Black America, none better understand white people than those of us with a white parent. And I do believe that. I think that many of us, that is the so-called mixed, are often discouraged from evolving an accurate, objective analysis based on that experience. We're not encouraged to do it, but I think that it can. But at the end of the day, all jokes aside, I actually think that anything from one's personal racialized, genderized, sexualized experience to anything else can become a revolutionary entry and doorway. So I actually don't mean it to say, but that has been a sort of joke of mine. I've even, yeah.
I'm not gonna respond because Geechee is seething.
Seething for what?
No,
I just wanted to take this off the screen. We had it on the screen for a little while. So, one of Claude's job was to handle school issues and disputes. So if something happened somewhere in the state of Florida, Claude was the one to call down there and say, "Hey, what's going on? Let me talk to the people." So he's in the interview talking about this situation, and I just want y'all to respond to it. But he says, "So I try as much as possible to get everybody actively involved in trying to solve the issue and let them know at the local level that there are some people up here that are concerned about the issue being solved." So he was talking about how when something happened in a small rural area in Florida, he called to let them know, like, we're interested in this, so you better act right or whatever. He said, gets reports from all the established agencies. On the other hand, if it's a minority group, Mexican Americans, Cuban migrants, or the blacks, as he always calls us, on their side, you have to try and get other agencies to do it for you. See, we have what is known as a Human Relations Commission, and I'll call them on the phone and tell them to get a couple of field workers down there as soon as possible to try and get them an objective report from the minority group sides, because they have very poor communication.
That's usually the problem, it says.
Right. And that's usually the problem. Usually, if I wait too long, we get a few demagogues or some black militants who will feel it just like that. Once that happened, then the sore feathers, as we really got problems. So when I was looking at this, again, there is a point where he talked about Yeshatela and the African People's Socialist Party, and he said they sometimes do political work, but they're not really serious. They don't do it all the time. So I don't know if, like, the black militants getting control of the narrative is people like Yeshatela and whoever else on the left. But do y'all read or hear, like, this idea of, like, making sure he control the narrative for the blacks, which is obviously state appropriate, and making sure nobody on the left gets into what?
I mean, the way you have in your very biased and one-sided elder abuse assault on Dr. Anderson presented it, it does appear that way. As you presented it, it does appear that he is trying to say, which is a big problem I think that exists particularly in commercial media spaces today, that there is this desire for, well, one of the ways to assure a certain level of popularity is to cut off the actual left, or anything that appears as an actual left analysis. So there is this attempt constantly to have, and whether it's done in this way or whether it's done in the way that InvestFest is doing it or others are doing it, there is this attempt to have a certain level of black leadership emerge that a white establishment, a wealthy white establishment, will have no problem with. And then that group wants to become the arbiters, the mediators, and then they perform what has been often been the critique from Kwame Ture and others of the white liberal, that this black liberal or intermediary class becomes one of the first things that they want to do is suppress militant, certainly armed in a struggle or revolutionary analysis, and they want to bring it all back to, you don't need to protest. You certainly don't need to march for the gays and the women and the disabled. You need to coalesce around your group, put your mask on, and start businesses and support one another's businesses. And that, I think, is that's sort of what I'm suggesting. We all collectively have a major struggle against.
So another interesting feat that I kind of looked into. So you remember, I don't know if y'all remember when Claude said that he was doing some organizing around busing, and his family might have owned a busing company or something like that. I think he said that on Breakfast Club. But when he said, so half of his family was white, he said, but he said a large segment of the black was white passing who worked in the busing industry. So I don't know if the bus.
That's not what he said.
Wait, what's not what he said?
That his family owned busing throughout the Carolinas.
Right, but I hear that. That's what I said that in terms of, yes, his family has some busing, but what I'm saying is prior to owning that, he says half his family was white, and then there was black families who were white passing in the Greyhound busing industry. So however he got into this busing industry, I don't think he ever tells, but I wonder if it has something to do with his white passing family who worked in the busing industry.
That's not the story as he told it initially.
Okay, what's the story then about his busing?
What he said was he tied busing to integration. Mm-hmm. He said that they were, during Jim Crow segregation, that there were black-owned busing companies, and his family. Now, he didn't distinguish whether it was the white half or the black half, but he said his family, and if you take the context clues, he was suggesting that it was his black families, because he said
white passing black.
He said, he didn't say that. I'm saying what the man said. I'm not saying what it was. So you can argue him that.
No, that's what he said. I'm saying he said that. That's what I'm saying. He said his majority of his black family was white passing,
because he tied it to a larger misstep of black people when he was trying to say we need alternative strategies for our wealth building. What he said was, my family owned one of the biggest black-owned busing lines. And he said after integration, black people didn't want to ride black buses because they wanted to sit on the front of white buses. And he said in the area where his family operated, there were no black white-owned bus lines. The bus lines were exclusively white-owned. And the black community asserted, we want to get some white buses in here so that we could sit at the front of them. And it's on record. It's recorded. I'm sure it's on YouTube. That was his narrative around the fact that integration and civil rights, as they all say, this lie that they're all telling, we had all these great black businesses prior to integration. And after integration, it destroyed the black family and black business infrastructure. That's the narrative he was putting.
That is how I remember. How I remember.
Yeah, I remember that too. I guess what I'm saying is I would like to hear more about the origin stories of how they even got into the industry. Because again, if it's telling black people they need to start businesses, and then he's also saying he has half white family, which changed his class dynamics and why he probably would get a doctor in the first place. And then he has another large segment of black members who are white passing, who also in the industry of busing. So again, people starting businesses and how they start a business, I think is important. So I would love to hear more about that. I'm not saying that his white passing family is the one who started it, but I'm very curious now that he acknowledged that he has a lot of black white passing family members in working for Greyhound or whatever. I think that would be interesting to see. But yeah, we can shift from Claude, but I think there's two things that I have in terms of quotes wise, and then the Obama letter, I could put that in the link. But I'm sorry, in the show notes.
I think there's some crucial points about Dr. Anderson that have been left out.
Well, we should add it in.
And I think, not to say that they're on the same level, but when you have someone that has been active and around for half a century, kind of like Du Bois, he's the kind of figure where you can take Du Bois and people who with vastly different outlooks and agendas can look at Du Bois' evolution and pick any point in his evolution and pick out what they want to be the case and lock him into that area. So the same thing with Claude. You know, I could put together a presentation on Claude Anderson that is Pan-African revolutionist and even could be interpreted as pro-socialist and use nothing but his direct quotes, writings, and public statements. Or I could put together one that is anti-capitalist, anti-black, ADOS, reactionary, because he's been around for a long time and he said a whole lot of contradictory shit.
Which is fair, but wouldn't that mean tracing? So, for instance, he came on the scene in the 70s, right? And so if you're looking at his work in the Askew administration with the Carter administration to when he wrote those books to now, I don't know if I've seen, like, as you say, a large segment of his time when you like, oh, you can advocate that he's a socialist or he's advocating. So I don't think
But I get the point about longevity, but I would still want to point out that why he recirculates today is often connected to these more conservative pro-capitalist positions. So that's really the concern for me. And I don't even mean for this to be so much just about this one man. I think I'm mostly interested in why versions of his argument, or why he in certain versions of himself would be invited to all these platforms and recirculated. To what end? And it's not to get us towards a Pan-African socialist. But yeah. And are we rushed? Do we have I
actually
a hard exit at 10 o'clock?
Phrasing.
I don't know, but
we're supposed to say proceed now.
Proceed now. I mean, but since you made that segue and you said what you just said, I mean, we could talk a little bit about Elaine Brown being one of the speakers at this.
Well, I saw this in the comments from A-Rob. Elaine Brown was also pivotal in raising $80 million for Kamala. I didn't realize that.
Well,
is that accurate?
I don't know, but I know she raised money for building this affordable housing thing.
I thought that 80 million went to housing, low-income housing.
That's what I thought so too. That's what I mean, I don't know about that part.
We
as a person
that was
raised in low-income housing, I don't advocate for low-income housing.
Well, I just put her low-income housing is the Black Panther apartments.
Yeah, so that's what I thought. The 80 million was for those apartments. I don't know what she's done for Kamala, but it wouldn't be a stretch given well, I don't know where she would be politically, but we do know that she just to the point I was making a minute ago, she is going to be at InvestFest. So I don't this is sort of what I'm getting at, that so now they're going to be able to, without getting into all of the controversies in history specific to the Panther Party and Elaine Brown, they're going to be able to promote themselves as being connected to that legacy as they do this very pro capitalist, black capitalist thing. And yeah. So I mean, these are the Black Panther apartments that she.
See, listen, y'all talking to Dhoruba, raising money with Dhoruba, and they're talking with Elaine Brown and creating affordable housing. So what, different levels.
Yeah,
levels.
I mean, and that's commendable. I don't have any. I'm not mad at any of that. I am. So what I would prefer. So, but see what. Well, my only issue, so similar to what I was just saying, my issue with these Black Panthers that are being called apartments would be, to what extent is that branding connecting people to the politics and the history of that party and applying them beyond the label and the brand into today's work? And that's so if the Black Panther Party can be a brand for, albeit importantly, affordable housing, and then also for Black capitalist investing, again, the work we're all trying to do around here becomes that much more complicated.
Yeah,
that's all.
Josephus says that would be the argument they use, using capitalism as a solution to the problem of capitalism, unlike what Fred Hampton told you not to do.
But also, well, I mean, the solution for the fortunate handful of people that get into that apartment, and they had already announced that the sort of lottery and application process had been closed. So it's already going to be limited in terms of how many people it can actually, and then to what extent is that program duplicatable?
So
yeah.
I also want to get into your Black Wall Street brother in Boston, but in that apartments, the building includes free Wi-Fi. So they got free Wi-Fi, fully furnished apartments, supportive services. They have 5 businesses there, and also a market and restaurant on site. So now we have, CMB has a chapter in Oakland in the area. I'm checking with them to see. I don't even know how long or where they at with the project, if it's already built. I know there was applicants for the housing. I don't know if people moved in yet, but I am checking on to kind of see the social impact of that. But I mean, hey, it's affordable housing. And I wonder if that's what they will talk about when they have her on stage during Invest Fest. And somebody rightly pointed out a lot of those people on the lineup has nothing to do with finance, but I don't think that Invest Fest has even turned or ever even came out to be anything about investments as it is of how I made it. When what's the guy named Diddy was on there, he was talking about how he made it. He wasn't talking about investment strategies. And then
no, I'm sure.
Yeah,
and I'm sure I can't prove it off the top, but I'm sure not even 1% of the people who will be speaking made it, quote unquote, from investment. They made it through selling their courses, through some other venture, through entertainment, through something else. But this idea that they made it through just straight up investing and working their tool, because like everybody says, and I watch all of the YouTube financial space says the same thing. The number one way to know that someone is scamming you is if they try to charge you to teach you how they made it, because anyone who actually has a way of making it isn't going to tell you how to do it, and they're not going to, and they would have no value. There would be no value in them selling it to you because they're too busy making more money by just working their own process. So
that's not capitalism. That's how it works.
It doesn't work that. So yeah. So as soon as somebody says I'm rich and I'm going to teach you how to invest if you sign up for my course, that's the hustle. That should be that's it right there.
What they meant is I'm going to get rich by trying to teach you how to get rich, because
no, I'm going to get rich. I'm going to get rich off of you.
Yeah. So Jared, you should set that up. If we can, Musa said he would love, they would love for y'all to interview Elaine about housing project. But Diallo, you were saying like
work that out. Like
that's your people, man. Call your
got
people.
her in a Rolodex, man. Man, I'm telling you, I haven't seen her. We don't know each other. But I have only the one time we were. it's a Patreon worthy story. That it was a wild occurrence.
But you know, go ahead and talk about affordable housing.
I would love to. I would love to. If anybody has a line to her, I would happily reach out.
All right. We could do that. Diallo, what was you saying about affordable housing though? You said it's not.
I said low income housing.
Low income. Okay.
All right.
What is it? You said it's not good because of what?
Oh, there's a myriad of reasons. I was just telling the story. I have a friend who grew up in the projects with me, but I won't even get into that. I would just say low income means low quality. It's synonymous. When someone is deliberately setting up low income housing, they're deliberately using substandard and often toxic materials to set those houses up. Number two, when they have low income housing, they put requirements and restrictions on the housing that most people who live in apartments, condos, or private residences do not have to deal with. And in my housing projects, the vast majority of the people that would get evicted weren't evicted for lack of payment of rent, but several of these other rules, and I know you wouldn't have a problem with this, Geechee, but Jared, it has kind of a dictatorial management system. And so low income housing is not about giving people a hand up. And you even see on the Black Panther housing, if you start to increase your income, if you start creating opportunities for yourself, you become ineligible for housing. And so I would see all the time that people who were doing hair had doing childcare, providing childcare for other residents of the projects who went to school. They would, at the very moment that they were beginning to be able to save, to be able to secure an automobile, be able to send their children to, if they thought it was a come up to private school, they would start getting letters of eviction. If you start a relationship and engagement and get married and try to move a partner into your space, that can get you evicted. They also have certain in the fine print that they have access to your property without prior notice or permission. So, like I said, I lived in low-income housing my entire childhood, except for maybe 3 or 4 years. I lived in a home, or about 3 or 4 years, less than 3 years. Just over 2 years, I lived in a private residence. All the rest of the time, I lived in HUD, housing projects or subsidized income housing, and it is predatory and exploitative. So yeah, and it's not about assisting the poor; it's about managing, overseeing, and corralling poor people.
There's no pleasing Diallo.
Seen it done right, even now.
There's no pleasing you, man. Maybe Jalen can please you. Maybe Jalen and Drew Holiday and his wife and some other people. This Black Wall Street thing in Boston is actually happening. It's happening. And it sounds familiar. Jared, I'm not sure if you remember how these things work, but the creators and the entrepreneurs are getting resources and they're getting support so that they can thrive. They're creating this little hub where you can go there and test out your little entrepreneur idea. So the startups are where this idea that Jalen will go and help generate. How much was it? Like $320 something billion or $5 billion. I'm sorry. So he's going to create $5 billion in additional net worth for the historically marginalized Black communities in Boston. Now, I don't know if that means give somebody $5 billion or create businesses and jobs that create another $5 billion revenue, but it sounds like that's how it's going to work. But yeah, what do y'all think about?
Well, he said net wealth, so that means people are going to walk away with $5 billion. Is this the goal?
And I don't know, but the people, is it the entrepreneurs? Is it the people who is that including the jobs that they're going to create? Like where are they getting this number from, and how is it going to impact?
I don't know. I didn't look into this, so I can't. I didn't really get a chance to look too much into it, or any into it. So I don't have anything specific to that effort to say, other than I will be interested to see how they are claiming to be able to develop $5 billion in net wealth, and for whom that $5 billion is targeted, that net wealth is targeted, and what. But entrepreneurialism isn't going to produce it. That I'm convinced of. So I don't know. My point would be that $5 billion that they say that they want to generate already exists. It just is not properly distributed. And that is the point I keep wanting us to come back to and focus on. There's no need to create a new $5 billion in net wealth through new entrepreneurial and business efforts. The $150 trillion in private net wealth produced last year for just this country alone could easily slice off this $5 billion for Boston. The 450 plus trillion held in private wealth globally could easily slice off the billions and whatever is necessary for whomever. But we're constantly being fed these stories about how one man is going to lead this initiative that's going to bring us into some new bright day with business and entrepreneurialism, and it's complete nonsense.
Well, I do tell you that his idea this is his apartment, not in a Black neighborhood. But so Roxbury is about 55% Black, and then what is Mattapan and Dorchester is where a large segment of Black folks are, which I'm curious to see. But this particular thing here is his penthouse that was not in any of those areas, but in a downtown white area where this part of the Boston is, I think, 88% white, and the median home value is around $500,000. And so he has a house there and he's selling it now. So I don't think he was even living in any of those areas that he's supposed to develop. I don't know that matters, but I also was trying to look in what type of things he's been doing in those couple areas. And the only thing I saw was he helped them paint a basketball court that I think has his face on it or something like that. But it'll be interesting to see how he and Drew Holiday, I would add that Drew Holiday and his wife are also on team. And there's another sister who is a fan of Kamala Harris ticket. She's on this little team of entrepreneurs.
We didn't really. I think. Speaking of that, I think next week we should really focus on the Harris Walz collabo, because the reaction has been fascinating.
Yeah,
I know
people
tomorrow,
love that guy.
Shout out to Renee. Tomorrow it's going to come up in the context of a discussion around surveillance on Saturdays with Renee, and then she's also got
article that she wrote.
Well, there's two. So she's got the one that she wrote about that we're going to talk about tomorrow about YouTubers using her work without crediting her on the Stop Cop City Map piece. And then she's got a new, I don't know if it's been published publicly, this new op-ed about Kamala and TimWalz that is dope, that we're gonna, I don't know to what extent I think we're gonna talk about it tomorrow, but people should just stay tuned and check it out when it comes out, if it isn't published already. But yeah, Diallo, I think you said you had to go. Do we need to wrap up? Do you want to take a moment to say anything before we get out of here, and then we can make some announcements and whatever else? And yeah.
No, I actually have a little more time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can ride out a little.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So anyway, so yeah, so just that then. So everybody, Saturdays with Renee, and then Sundays, Ear Doctor. All of these shows are still happening. Monday morning, I'll be back with a roundtable of folks working with Mumia Abu Jamal's health committee. So come back, and Dr. Burrows is going to join us for that as well. Maybe a few others. So come back for that, and just stay tuned. I think there's, as I said, we are. There was another question about it, just so we can. Just before we move on, real quick, there was another question about. From Ray Johnson, did y'all say permanently demonetized? Yes, we are permanently demonetized. We just got the word yesterday. And so we are going to figure out the best response. We're not going anywhere. And yet there may still, in fact, be changes. So please stay tuned. You can support us materially through Patreon. And we encourage that. And you can still like and share and subscribe, and you can still comment. You can still, but we are permanently demonetized, and this will negatively impact us farther on the algorithmically. So the more you all can like, share, subscribe, comment, and the more that we can help mitigate some of that as well. But yeah, go ahead, Geechee. Go ahead.
No, you mentioned the Kamala ticket, and this person is one of the leading people in Jalen's project, Malia. And I
know Malia. I know Malia. We've crossed paths once or twice. Yeah,
Malia is the one who's, I don't know if she's leading it, and Jalen is kind of like taking the face of it, but it looks like she is the most influential person in this Black Wall Street
So in fact, years ago, this is actually interesting because years ago, Malia Lazu was at the time a rising star in the nonprofit world, and we were brought into some electoral political endeavor. I remember Bill Fletcher was doing this Aurora project. I think this was it. I might need to be checked on this. And the goal, I thought, and he said it was going to be the new Rainbow Coalition, the Fred Hampton Rainbow Coalition. But there was, long story short, there was little desire to move past a Democratic Party electoral political project. So I quickly exited. So I'm not surprised to see Malia having grown in this space to take these positions and then to be supporting efforts like this here. And folks are excited. They're promoting this. I mean, a lot of people are saying like this is this was the solution. Yeah, go ahead. My bad. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was trying to cue it up. My bad.
No, it's cool. Just quickly, the excuse for the permanent demonetization, we're going to have to come back and have a broader conversation. There's going to be a statement from the platform coming out in the not too distant future, maybe even today, I'm not sure. And we will have to say a little bit more about that. But essentially, I'm gonna leave it. Let me just leave it there for now. But it's just some nonsense. It's just nonsense. It's just nonsense. Yeah.
There's some interesting goings ons around here.
I mean, it's
go back to how far off Geechee was last week.
I know. I was actually, so for instance,
about what?
About who I thought Kamala was gonna elect, in which it was a joke that we started in Cuba because somebody during one of our meetings, somebody said, "Oh my gosh, Joe Biden just dropped out." Everybody started clapping. I'm like, "What the fuck we clapping for?" And I was like, "Anyway." So I thought Stacey Abrams would have been, or AOC would have been a good move, but let's look at this white guy, and look at Kamala's reaction to how he speaks and what he's talking about, because I thought it was rather interesting. But here's the future vice president of
like all regular people I grew up with in the heartland. JD studied at Yale, had his career funded by Silicon Valley billionaires, and then wrote a bestseller trashing that community. Come on. That's not what middle America is. And I got to tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy. That is if he's willing to get off the couch and show up. So, you see what I did there?
Yes.
Like all
so you see what I did there? So obviously the charisma and all his showmanship that Kamala doesn't have. I see that little team right there being a fit for it. And you already see obviously different type of Black leaders and notable people are celebrating them and they're excited about it. And
it's going to be formidable. I think from their perspective, they did the right thing. They made a strong move. As I predicted, at one point they were going to have to get a white man, and he's bringing a certain energy. And then what it will allow people to forget, for instance, that while governor, he called the National Guard on people protesting George Floyd's killing. So this whole thing about, and in fact, Renee talks about that in this forthcoming op-ed of hers. So there's going to be a lot of this cleansing of his image as they Now, and there have been a couple. I should have grabbed a couple clips because there's a couple places where I've seen what I think is a strong argument. I don't agree with it, but it's going to be a strong and formidable argument to get people to support that ticket. When they start talking about some of the policies that Trump wants to support versus what they will not support, and this, that, and the third. But what it will again gloss over is both the fraudulence in their claims, that is the Harris-Walz ticket, and then the fraudulence of what the party itself will allow, and the overall net positive impact of supporting that ticket will be far overblown, and we will be.
Leah just said this happened, so
in trouble.
Simone Biles just reportedly donated $4 million to the Harris-Walz campaign.
I mean, again, we're not in the John Carlos, Tommy Smith era. The world has not produced a movement that would impact the athletic community in that way. So I'm not surprised that she would do that.
We can't blame the athletes, though.
I'm not. I'm saying I'm
blaming them, but this is
you the main ball chasing.
Right? John Carlos.
Look at him.
Listen, those Olympic athletes, there was a whole campaign in the Black community say, don't run in Mexico and crawl at home. So they did that as a result of the pressure from the community. So the community is doing as much more flag waving than the ball chasers and the flippers.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. I'm fully agreeing with you. That's what I'm saying. We can't. She's
all right, but it's not about the level of consciousness or even commitment of the ball chasers and the flippers. It's about the consciousness of the masses.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying created Carlos and Smith.
Yes.
That there was a whole movement producing them. So yeah.
Even the white boy had to get in on it.
Even the white boy got in it. That's right.
The white boy was like, damn, let me.
Well, and it's funny. I just heard a discussion of it. I didn't realize to the extent that his own career was destroyed.
Yeah, even the white boy got in trouble.
Yeah, they ruined him for that too. Yeah.
Well, but don't you think the timing of like the NBA, the basketball, LeBron and them winning these the gold medal, and everybody talking about how American they are and they repping America at this time, it's gonna be a whole lot of.
Oh yeah, you got LeBron flag waving, Beyonce's flag waving, Kamala's running. I mean, it's going to be it's
about to get wow.
And everyone will also forget, by the way, that it was even more intense when Obama first hit the scene, and after 8 years of Obama, we were exactly where we are now. So this idea that Kamala now is going to be the change, and that this is going to be the moment that's going to propel us ever forward is another part of the mythology. So it's going to be difficult. I guess the theme for me today is that our challenge, collectively, those of us here and the like, has gone up infinitely.
Maybe
no. Okay.
Maybe Kamala will elect your boy from who says that billionaires should go away. Maybe she'll put him on her economic cabinet.
Yeah, and like my man argued years ago, maybe Tyler Perry will one day turn around and make the Assata Shakur biopic. Do we want any of that? Is any of that what we want or should expect?
It will be shot here in Atlanta, and I would definitely civil disobedience that little situation. I'll get arrested. Yeah, I will run into their little set and start causing havoc, throwing shit around. Right here on Tyler Perry Avenue, or whatever you call that shit. Tyler Perry Lane, Tyler Perry Road, one of the fucking streets named after.
Hey, just real quick before I know I think we're about to wrap soon, but I did notice this. This is another EYL earn your leisure favorite. Grant Cardone says earning $400,000 a year is embarrassing as a human being. Asks how do you make sense of $35,000 a month? So I'd
like to get up to embarrassing.
Like, okay, yeah. What's below embarrassing?
Embarrassing.
I want to be embarrassing 1 year, and then y'all, I'm getting missing. That's it. I just want to get embarrassed 1 year.
What's under that? I'm about 50 steps below embarrassed. What is that? A shame?
Oh my God!
I saw that.
Medea joins the Black Liberation Army. So
Beyonce
when we did
that at the.
Well, no, but Tyler Perry beat her. So years ago, when my former colleague and I were doing a chapter on Tyler Perry, and I had to suffer all of his films, there is one of those Medea films, I forgot which one, where the opening montage is showing her through her life, and one of them shows her in a black leather jacket with the beret and a fist up. So Medea was a Panther and may have been in the Black Liberation Army. So Tyler Perry was ahead of the curve, so to speak. Put some respect on that man's name.
Come on.
What is this? Exactly. That was it. Oh, no beret, but the afro, the picked out hair. Yeah, there it was.
So maybe she laid the line.
Medea goes to jail. That was it.
Maybe the line is already laid, and that's coming in the future. Who knows?
Well,
and Elaine Brown is going to co-write it.
Well, that movie's already been made. I already watched it.
No, I'm talking about
Tyler Perry
the actual Liberation Army part.
I don't think Tyler Perry could afford Elaine Brown at this juncture.
Maybe.
She would break the budget.
Wait, Tyler Perry never did InvestFest yet, did he? Or did he?
They can't afford Tyler Perry.
They can't afford Tyler. He's not ready. They're not ready.
He never did an interview with them either. They got Steve Harvey and they ain't get Tyler Perry. Man.
But Tyler Perry does Oprah. Come on now.
I mean, it's intersections though, because Pinky and Oprah type, and they got Pinky, so they gonna get Oprah soon.
You putting Pinky in the seat?
Well, Pinky,
like I said, if I ever run for office,
Pinky is the reason.
Pinky in the same level as Oprah.
No, what I'm saying is they're in the circle.
Hierarchy.
No, you're not hearing me. They're in the circle. If it wasn't for Oprah, Pinky wouldn't be Pinky right now. Oprah is the one who catapulted her slutty vegan. You don't know
how to classify your minions. You don't know how to classify your subjects.
Everybody, they always say which Pinky. Y'all need to clean your minds up. Every time. Goddamn.
Because there's only one. There's really only one.
Every time you say
which Pinky.
Yeah. Nah. There's really only one. And it is the white Jesus. Every time you say Pinky, I got to first go through who the real one is before I get to who you talking about.
Stop doing that, yo.
Nah, man, I will not.
No, but listen, if it wasn't for Oprah, it wouldn't be a Pinky Cole. The slutty vegan little joint got popping off because of Oprah saying, "Oh my gosh, this tastes like a hamburger."
You better tell him, Josephus. Better tell him, Josephus. There's only one. Nah, there's only one.
Where Pinky from? Where that Pinky from? Let me Google this lady. Where's she from? She from Jackson?
Put on safe search before you Google Pinky.
Yeah,
never mind.
My wife needs to talk to y'all.
When? Right now?
After we go off for brief.
Duh. We already knew we had a meeting.
We in trouble now.
Damn.
I forgot we in trouble now.
And how y'all be happening on here?
We got called to the office.
First of all, you just brought up Pinky.
Well, Geechee and Jared, come down to the front office, please. The hall monitors, please allow them to pass through the halls.
Yo, Jared, I know you saw it. I know Diallo can't watch it, but did you see Cam and Mace interview their high school coaches?
Did I?
Bro,
it's one of the best. That may be the best moment in YouTube history. Are you crazy?
Yo, I love that joint. I mean,
their coaches. It made everything so clear. It made everything so clear. Their coaches were off the rack, and they should have their own shows. The older one in particular.
Easily. He wow.
We need documentaries. We need specials. We need extended interviews. Let him go to Club Shay Shay or whatever. Yeah. They need to that's what I'm talking. Yeah, I absolutely saw that, and the interview was classic, man.
It was a classic interview, yo. And yeah. But that's kind of how Diallo, because Cam,
I can't have no punk playing point for me.
Mace snitched on Cam, and so that reminded me of Diallo
snitched on Cam. Absolutely, and we just got called to the office. So listen, real quick, anything before any announcements, any closing comments before we head to the principal's office?
Nah, man.
I'm just saying, don't jump off of here.
We know we ain't supposed to. We knew that before you knew that.
Okay.
What do you mean?
She gotta remind you because you the one always late and misdirected somewhere else.
I've been on time like crazy, so nobody can. Y'all just like treat me like Claude Anderson. I can't escape my past. I try to do right. I start doing better, and y'all want to lock me into.
Bro, you was not on time this morning.
Yes, I was. It's on tape. When y'all popped up on the screen,
Jared,
I popped up right
that
there.
Don't count. No,
he did. No, he.
We already hit live before he came on. I saw the
No, he was
already
there.
Live.
It's on tape. Don't try to lie when it's recorded.
Bro,
I was here right next to you on the screen.
Peace to Mikael. Thank you for coming through. It was always good to have a conversation about Cuba. If you missed that, please go back to the beginning of the show. Check the timestamps. That'll be there later. Just 2 Fs. Just as we wrap here, we are endeavoring, the platform is endeavoring to prepare for that. The potential eventually kick off the platform, although the cause for the demonetization it's not likely to be repeated. So, but it is something that we are endeavoring to correct. Please do. We appreciate everybody. We really do appreciate all your support. However you can continue to support what we're doing, please do like, share, subscribe, comment, the Patreon. Stay tuned for announcements, forthcoming statements. There is more to come. And I will be back tomorrow with Renee. And again on Monday, talking Mumia. You got Diallo's show. The link is in the show description. Barter and Build link is in the show description. Anything else, fellas? Are we good?
Tell them about the gun line, Diallo. Tell them about the gun line.
And then
donation.
8/17/2024. We'll be in Jackson, Mississippi with Skip Coon. So come on through to Urban Foxes if you can be there. Check out this new album, August.
Diallo, let them know about what's coming with the.
I don't know that we have a PayPal. We have a Cash App. So we'll make sure if that's not already available, but if you can, I would encourage Patreon for the, because not only do you are able to help support us financially, but it encourages a continued engagement through forthcoming content as well. So all right, everybody, there we go. Peace if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. And we'll catch you next time right here and Earn Your Liberation. Thanks, everybody. Peace.
You got to earn your liberation.